This is the story of how two worlds came together, unexpectedly and rather personally. Andrea Galer is a costume designer who cares passionately about every aspect of her trade, and a costume designer at the top of her profession. She won the BAFTA award for her designs for the BBC's Bleak House series. But achieving mesmerising recreations of historical costume demands considerable research.
As she kind of goes up the spectrum of, by this point where Rochester's actually, she's getting more confident and Rochester's sort of planned to marry her. Light, airy feel, and I have to say it's around lace, mainly because lace was a very important thing in that period. And
Andrea wants to understand not just the look, but how cloth and trimmings were made centuries ago. Not because such detail is necessary on television, but because that's the sort of person Andrea is. She's dedicated.
That gave me a colour palette to work from and a way of bringing her alive. So I had two shawls, 19th century shawls, originals, that have had a long life already. My cats have sat on them, fed my babies on them. So in my life they've had a life. But
take lace, for example. Her sister, on her return from a holiday in Sri Lanka, aware of Andrea's interest, brought her back examples of beautiful smocking and lace made in the villages. Andrea has a steady need for intricate fabrics and has to search further and further to find handmade work. There's no doubting the emotional value of lace. It is not universally called finery without reason. But such beguiling products couldn't possibly have been in starker contrast to what followed. The tsunami. The world went into shock. The enormity of the wave flashed around the globe. A mass outpouring of compassion seemingly gripped everybody. These very people whose skills Andrea was beginning to be emotionally involved with had been hit by the most devastating disaster imaginable. For Andrea, it was a wake-up call. For all those glamorous locations that filmmaking indulges, suddenly there were real people who were suffering behind the facade of exotic, faraway places. As soon as she could, Andrea and actress Geraldine James went to Galle in southern Sri Lanka. Here there's a Brussels-style lace-making tradition that's inherited from Dutch colonial masters. And here, for the women who had survived the tsunami, was a desperate need to rebuild incomes.
There are most houses, all damages here. There are also houses, there are more than 50% dead.
In the beginning, the devastation was terrifying to behold and the way forward difficult to see.
Southern province in Galle, more than 7,000 people dead.
The destruction here is actually overwhelming. The trees, the houses and the people who've been destroyed are just beyond thinking for people like me.
But the need to help shattered lives was compelling. Andrea and Geraldine knew they had to immerse themselves in the lives of the women of Galle.
And you know, everybody in the world is wanting you all to be okay. It's helping you.
Here was craft skill almost smashed by devastated poverty. And here was this need for costume recreation in films. If only the two could be connected. The idea of the film industry having social responsibility appealed to them both.
But we're doing what we can. Andrea is very interested in setting up an educational centre so that the girls like this who are brilliant at what they do can teach other girls, younger girls, to do the same thing. Because these skills mustn't be lost. They're important.
Andrea and Geraldine toured Gaul, seeing how lives had been wrecked. And they saw lace.
Design. Lace.
Andrea
Pillow
needs
lace.
to see that. That's beautiful.
Pirani lost her house and her daughter shows them over the wreckage.
Want your help?
They found they had to be polite about what they were seeing. Yes, lace being made the traditional way, but not nearly fine enough, and made from cheap cotton, not silk. Andrea met Anusha and Shamanti, who own a craft shop in Gaul's fort. Gaul had been a tourist honeypot, but the tsunami meant that the only people buying now were aid workers. Before, the two sisters had a network of suppliers. Now they weren't sure who was still alive.
Everywhere dead bodies, screaming bodies, damaged bodies, headless bodies.
Women up and down the coast used to make lace to supplement their fishermen husbands' income. In a country where the caste system is still legal, these families are at the bottom of the heap. It turned out that the wives' lace output was controlled by middlemen. They, in turn, are controlled by local guilds that keep wages low by monopolising the supply chain. The lace makers of Gaul were getting 35 pence a day for long hours hunched over their pillow cushions.
Lace-making village here.
The first year after the tsunami was the scandal of the tents. The Sri Lankan government was painfully slow in distributing the large amounts of aid that had poured in from a compassionate world. Andrea came away committed to helping, but wasn't sure how. She made further trips to Sri Lanka, redesigned the lace patterns, set up training with the lace makers, lobbied unsuccessfully with the Sri Lankan government to release funds to rebuild accommodation and premises. However, she did manage, with the help of Oscar-winning designer Alexandra Byrne, to order and use a substantial amount of lace in both television and film costume dramas.
It was really interesting. We did it in 2 pillows. The edging was done in one pillow and the straight band was done in another 2 pillows. And when we started, one lady told me, "Oh, this is really messy, I am going to stop this." But the other lady told me, no, this is easy. We should follow the book and the design together.
With this money and funds from Adopt Sri Lanka, Andrea has now set up a training and regeneration centre. Whenever Andrea mentioned Sri Lanka at work, she'd get enthusiastic encouragement and help promoting the cause.
Action!
To publicise the project, stars modelled costumes. Exhibitions created awareness. And the Royal Opera House bought lace. In Jane Eyre, Andrea made a point of using Gaul lace and won an Emmy Award in the States. But in the main, Andrea has to pay £1,000 a month to keep what is now a co-op of 100 women from destitution. Her dreams of sustainability are overtaken by the harsh reality of the developing world and fickle sponsors. Sri Lankan government money has gone into tourist projects from where economic growth is supposed to trickle down to the poor. And the caste system remains, unfairly keeping people in their place. Annika is 23 and is a skilled hand crochet maker. Her family home was destroyed by the tsunami and her family was split up. They've never received funding or help to rebuild their house.
There are 3 families living inside this house.
Before the tsunami, Anusha had run a little craft shop. Now she manages the Power of Hands project. It's Anusha who can see who needs glasses for those with failing eyesight, whose roof needs fixing, or who is becoming too old to work. The Power of Hands Foundation has managed against all the odds to give the women of Gaul a decent wage and a better place to work. But there are small problems that are in many ways huge. Milani is a skilled lace maker who lives in South Marissa. It takes her 2 hours by bus to get to Gaul, to pick up work, to bring back home. That's 4 hours of her day. She brings back work for her sister, who does embroidery and pillow lace. They live with their brother and his wife and child. He's a fisherman, and his wife is also a lace maker. Even less fortunate neighbours gather to work in dark, overcrowded conditions.
It doesn't have proper lighting and great space to work. I think they need a lot of help.
It's taken about 18 months, actually, of hard work on your part, hard work in the UK to keep raising awareness to the fact that it isn't a question of buying and selling lace, it's a question of understanding how the women could possibly, even utilise that skill.
The connections between third world lace making and costume dramas remain tenuous. But at least what works is understood. Getting people to buy Gaul-made lace artefacts at exhibitions works. And holding events, like this one, works. In the end, small amounts make a great difference to people otherwise living on only $1 a day. If you've been touched by what you've seen and would like to know more, the Power of Hands has a website at powerofhandsfoundation.org. That's powerofhandsfoundation.org.